All right, so it's likely that this lecture won't take the full 2 hours, but that's okay, because if we can get through all of this, then the sooner the better. Also, keep in mind that, we're going to only be covering from English colonization on. We're not going to be, I'm not going to be testing you on the Spanish colony stuff, okay? So does everyone find their section on English colonization? Everyone's there already? Okay, a few dates that need to be changed only because my schedule got crazy as of today. So unfortunately, I'm going to be visiting other middle schools starting tomorrow, giving a speech and trying to recruit them to come to La Puente. As a result of that, I've had to change my entire schedule. So today will be the only one this week, and then next week, Monday and Wednesday from 3 to 5. It has to be that early because I have to speak at Sierra Vista and Sparks in the evening. And then on Thursday, 5 to 7 is normal. But again, I can't do it on Thursday, so unfortunately that's what the schedule change had to be. So that sucks, and I apologize. And then it'll be, so the new changes are Monday and Wednesday is going to be the new schedule change. So again, if you can't attend those because you have sports after school, I completely understand and I apologize for the schedule change. I will record the lectures and post them online, so that way at least you guys will have access to it. It's just because I went into a meeting to get pizza and it ended up having to volunteer to do something else. So pizza ends up getting you in trouble. So four of my evenings for the next 2 weeks are booked, which I did not intentionally plan for. It just kind of happened. So just be aware that there's no other sessions for this week except for tonight. Next week there'll be 3, and 2 of them are pretty early. So again, just change your schedule accordingly. I'll post these new dates online. And again, if you're curious as to why, it's because I got booked for 4 other events in the next 2 weeks, which I'm not too happy about, but they just wanted the best teacher to talk about La Puente. So what am I going to do? Anyway, so there's that. So, again, today we're going to be talking about, again, the colonial era, English colonization. So we're not going to be going over Spanish colonization, so please keep that in mind. We're going to be jumping right ahead into English colonization because your test for this semester will only be covering English colonization. Now, when we go over this again second semester, we're going to go back to Spanish because I need to make sure you guys are ready to be able to write for the essay portion. There might be a question on Spanish colonization. But for your purposes, you only need to be prepared for the English colonization. And in particular today, we're going to be covering this English colonization in general and the southern Chesapeake colonies. So, these are the Chesapeake colonies, folks. So again, I want to make sure you guys are familiar because many times you guys get confused when you see the term Chesapeake. The Chesapeake colonies simply refers to which colonies, folks? Which group of colonies? No, not the 13. Just the southern colonies. So when we're talking about the Chesapeake colonies, folks, be familiar that we're only talking about the southern colonies. So if we say, what was the primary crop of the Chesapeake colonies, the answer is what? What did the Chesapeake colonies primarily grow, folks? Tobacco, right? So again, when we talk about Chesapeake, be familiar that we're only talking about southern colonies. Yes? What? 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah. There's 5, yeah, including Delaware. There's 5. Oh, Georgia, just kidding, yeah. So Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, yes. So again, folks, primarily when we talk about the Chesapeake colonies, we're talking about the southern colonies here, so be aware. Now, we talked about why we first came to the Americas. And one of the primary reasons to come to Americas was because we were inspired by the book, what? What book inspired us to come to America, Marisol? Utopia. So we're inspired by the book Utopia, right? It's written by Sir Thomas More. So that's a major reason why we're coming to America for the first time. This notion of we can find something great, we can expand and find a utopia. So that's the first reason. The second thing that's making us come to America is the wool trade, right? The wool trade. And the wool trade really changes things up in Europe. Because of high demand for wool, we start closing off all public lands and breaking it up. And so what's the name of that movement where we denied the poor access to these lands? The enclosure movement. So be familiar with the enclosure movement. And again, folks, if you have questions, today is the day to ask them. So if you're like, Mr. King, what the hell are you talking about? Please ask, because I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because I want to make sure we cover all of this. Also, if I don't cover it, likely it's not going to be on this test. Does that make sense? So if I'm not going over it, don't worry about it, because I'm going to jump around. I'm not going to jump around, but I'm going to move forward pretty quickly, depending on what actually needs to get covered. Now, the wool trade resulted in the enclosure movement. But the other thing that also began to force people to come to America was this law that said the eldest son would inherit all the land. What was the name of that law? Primogeniture. Now, interesting fact, folks. Parliament and the Prime Minister of England recently passed the law, just recently, ending the policy of primogeniture. Which means Kate Middleton, who is who is eventually going to have a child, who just is pregnant recently, if she has a daughter, that daughter can now become the queen, and it won't automatically go to her son if she has a boy next. Does that make sense? So in previous English law, if your daughter came first, but you had a son second, who would get the land? The son. But because Parliament is now ending primogeniture, what that suggests is now that the son doesn't necessarily get it now. It's whoever was born first. And it only took them 600 years, maybe longer than that, 900 years to pass a law that would now represent modern, modern things. Another major reason why we're go ahead and expanding is the military. If you guys remember, we successfully defeat what threat from Spain? The Spanish Armada. And what helps us defeat the Spanish Armada? Who comes down and helps us defeat the Spanish Armada? The hurricane, the Protestant wind, right? So be familiar with that Protestant wind. God comes down and says, nay, the English will succeed. The English will prevail. So that's all good, right? Everyone cool there so far? Everyone remembering all this stuff? Coming back to memory? And again, if you want to stop me for any reason, please do. Today is the day to do that. Now, we had other explorers at this time, but you don't have to worry about them today. So, yes, we had Sir Humphrey Gilbert, and yes, you had Sir Walter Raleigh in Roanoke Island that disappeared twice. Don't worry about them today, okay? You don't have to worry about them for your final. Get to Virginia, and this is where you have to start worrying about stuff. Virginia, once we start talking about Virginia, that's seriously when you have to start paying attention to your notes. So put a big star next to Virginia, and your test begins here with Virginia. So when you start talking about Virginia and Jamestown, your test starts here. So, first and foremost, folks, the majority of people that went to Jamestown or Virginia, why did they come? What was the major reason we came to Jamestown or Virginia? Did we come because we wanted to expand Puritanism? No. Did we come because we wanted to find a new land to spread the word of God? What was the main reason why we came to the Americas? Jonathan? Gold, profit, money, exploration. We want to find what, Brenda? Yeah, we want to find that western passage to the east, right? But really what it comes down to, folks, is we come to the Americas to make money. Is that clear with everyone? We want to make money. We want to be glorious. We want to make a name for ourselves. But primarily, we came for money. Is that clear with everyone so far? We came for money. Eventually, we do give the Englishmen a charter to make sure that we're guaranteed what? Citizenship, English rights, right? So we guarantee English rights because of the Virginia Charter. So something else to keep in mind. Now, was Virginia successful in the early years? Absolutely not. We had things like starving time, and things were bad and mosquito infested. We didn't stockpile food. There were too many people that didn't know what they were doing. So unfortunately, the first few years were pretty unsuccessful. In fact, luckily, we were saved after that first winter by who? Captain John Smith. So John Smith is the first person to save Jamestown, okay? So John Smith was the first person to save Jamestown, and he gave the very famous speech, "He who shall not work shall not eat." Everyone cool with that so far? He who shall not work shall not eat. And he built shelters for them, and he got saved by Pocahontas, and things got better. And then he left because he got injured, right? So then you had the second year of starving time, and got really bad. And then they were saved by who the second time? Lord Delaware. And he established forts, right? And he brought in, military tactics. But most importantly, he brought over women. He brought over women. And that was really going to help the colonists, become Englishmen again. It was going to help them adapt to this new culture. It was going to help them bring England over to America. They built fort walls like we talked about last time, despite the giant Native Americans. And again, there were wars, right, between the Native Americans and the Americans. We talked about the Powhatan Wars. We talked about those. So be familiar with the Powhatans, the Native American tribes locally that were attacking. So be familiar with the Powhatan tribes and the Powhatan Wars. But eventually, Lord Delaware does a pretty good job. He successfully expands Jamestown along the river like we talked about before. And so now the question is, what made this colony profitable? Because eventually this colony wasn't doing very well. Sure, Lord Delaware came and saved us, but the economy was not thriving. The economy was struggling. So who introduced what that made the Virginia colony profitable? So who introduced what that made the Virginia colony profitable? Eva. John Rolfe introduced tobacco. So if anyone asks, what made Virginia profitable? It wasn't the indentured servant system. It definitely wasn't cotton, because are we growing cotton yet? No, it's not banking, it's not trade, it's tobacco. Okay, so tobacco made Virginia profitable. Tobacco saved Virginia initially. Everyone cool with that so far? Okay. So you got all that cool stuff on, and because of tobacco and what it did to the land, tobacco drained the soil, right? So as a result of tobacco draining the soil, what did we have to do with our farms? Karina, we had to expand our farms, and eventually your small farm became a what? A plantation. So here you see the shift from small farms to plantations. And again, what directed that demand? Tobacco. Tobacco caused all of that stuff. Now here's the other thing. Because our small farms are growing bigger and bigger and bigger, what else do we need? We need workers. And so what is going to meet our initial demand for labor in the colonies? The headright system or the indentured servant system. So be familiar with the headright system or indentured servant system. Now the indentured servant system was a good thing, because who did it allow to come to America? The poor. Because can the rich people afford to come to America? Of course they can. But it's the poor who really need that opportunity. So what happened was that the indentured servant system gave the poor an opportunity to come to America. And as a result, do you think a lot of poor came to America? Most definitely. In fact, the largest group of people immigrating to America at this time were poor indentured servants. So when asked who was the largest group in the Chesapeake colonies at this time, that answer would be what? Poor indentured servants, who are typically poor. So that's pretty common, folks. So you should be familiar with that. Now, typically when they signed up, what was the agreement? I will give you work and I will pay for you to come to America. In exchange, you'll work for me for how long?
7 years.
7 years. And in exchange, I'll also give you land, shelter, maybe some clothes and food. But that was the basic idea. Everyone cool with that? All right, head-right system. Now, we had to ask ourselves, so was this a good thing or a bad thing? And what did the Freethorn letter tell us? Was indentured servant system awesome and great? No, it was terrible, right? It was not a fun time. So Freethorn letter tells us that the indentured servant system was not so great. Nonetheless, folks, like we said before, Jamestown was so profitable as a result of tobacco that Jamestown eventually becomes what Chesapeake colony? What? No. Virginia. There's slides that go along with the lecture, folks. So Jamestown becomes so profitable off of the tobacco crop that eventually it becomes a larger plantation called Virginia. Okay, so again, this Chesapeake colony, which again means what? Southern colony. Again, remember that, folks. Again, one of the biggest problems people tell me after the AP test is, Mr. King, I forgot what Chesapeake meant. Southern. It just means the southern colonies, okay? The southern colonies became Virginia, or rather, this one became Virginia, and it made most of its money off of tobacco. Now, because so many indentured servants are coming in, do we have to create some sense of stability in this colony? Sure. So what institution of democracy is introduced to America? The House of Burgesses. So the House of Burgesses is introduced to America for the first time, and this is the first institution of democracy. This is the first institution of democracy in America, okay? This is the first institution of democracy, the House of Burgesses, or the House of Burgesses. And again, they introduce democracy, which is pretty cool, I guess. Now, at the same time we're introducing democracy, what else are we introducing? Slavery. Now, slavery is cool because, you know, we can replenish and we can own their kids and we can replace them, and that's pretty awesome. But primarily, we replace slaves. Why? What don't slaves do? Who can tell me what slaves don't do that thus makes them more appealing? Michelle? They don't rebel. Who does rebel? Indentured servants. We don't like the indentured servants. So we say, let's replace them with slaves. And again, we start coming up with slave codes, you know, don't run away, don't teach them English, that kind of stuff. But we'll go more to slave codes in Unit 5, right? When we start talking about slavery again, we'll recover slave codes. So for your purposes, you don't need to know it today. Now, one thing that really woke us up and made us realize, whoa, wait a minute, these slaves are in fact, these indentured servants are in fact dangerous, was what event? Bacon's Rebellion. So what Bacon's Rebellion showed us was that indentured servants are prone to rebellion. They tend to rebel. Now, in this case, folks, Nathaniel Bacon rebelled against who? But who? Who was in charge of Virginia at this time? Governor Berkeley. So Governor Berkeley is in charge of Virginia at this time. And they rebel against Governor Berkeley because they want to be protected by who? Or be protected from who? The natives. Because what happens here is these backcountry settlers are being attacked by Native Americans. And who refuses to protect them? The governor and the Tidewater elite. So we got to make sure that we protect them. Ultimately, does Bacon's Rebellion succeed or fail? It fails. But what it shows us is what? What is the significance of Bacon's Rebellion? Yes. That's right. There are class tensions between the rich and the poor. These social tensions between the Tidewater elite and who? The backcountry settlers. Any questions about Bacon's Rebellion at all? the backcountry settlers, and the Tidewater elite. Questions there? You sure? Okay. Moving forward. Again, here's the path that Bacon took when he attacked Berkeley and all that stuff. So everyone good on Virginia? Everyone comfortable with Virginia? Jamestown, John Smith, John Rolfe, tobacco, indentured servants, headright system. Everyone familiar with all of those things? Yeah, everyone's starting to trigger all these memories again? Cool. Now, don't replace your current facts with these old facts. You have to hold them all in there. So just because I'm reminding you of these things, you're not allowed to forget the Pendleton Civil Service Reform Act. You're not allowed to forget Louis Sullivan. You're not allowed to forget, I don't know, blacklists and boycotts and lockouts. You still have to remember that stuff because that's also going to be on your final. I'm reminding you. I'm not replacing facts in your brain. Your brain should be able to hold all of this. Now, the next Chesapeake colony you need to be familiar with is Maryland. And Maryland was founded by Lord Baltimore. Lord Baltimore. And primarily, Maryland was founded to protect which religious group? Maryland was founded to protect which religious group? Carolina? Catholics. Designed to protect Catholics. So remember that, folks. If you can't remember, think like Virgin Mary, right? Catholics worship the Virgin Mary. That's one really good way to do it. Protestants don't. Only Catholics, worship the Virgin Mary. Because the Virgin Mary is Catholic. Maryland, yeah, Catholics, that's why. So, one of the key things that, founded by Lord Baltimore here, was they did a few things. Number one, they established the Act of Toleration. And the Act of Toleration passed in 1649, guaranteed what to who? Religious toleration for all Christians, especially Catholics. Because the goal was to protect Catholics from who in the future? Protestants. The goal was to protect Catholics in the future from Protestants. So remember, folks, be aware of that. The whole purpose of all of this was to protect the Catholics in the future from Protestants because they knew it was going to be a problem. Also, they had their own legislative assembly. What was that called? Their colonial assembly was called a House of Delegates, very similar to the House of Burgesses. But they gave them what special power? Power of the purse. Power of the purse gave you the power over? Governor's salary, good power over money, all that jazz. Any questions about Maryland? For your purposes, folks, all you have to know about Maryland is the Act of Toleration and Catholics. If you guys can remember that, you're doing swell. Okay? Now, just fun fact, on the actual AP test, there'll only be about 4 or 6 questions on the colonies. So I know we're spending all this time, but it's because you don't know which 4 or 6 questions will be on the colonies. So I just went over 7 previous AP tests, and on average it's 4 to 6 questions. So you don't know which 4 to 6, so who knows? Then you have the Carolinas, folks. What you guys have to know about the Carolinas is their economy. You don't really have to worry about their politics. What you have to worry about is what they grew. So, South Carolina was the most profitable Carolina, right? South Carolina was the most profitable colony in general, South Carolina. And they made most of their money through what harbor? What is this? No, what harbor is this? Charleston Harbor, very good. This is Charleston Harbor where they made most of their money. And South Carolina grew primarily what 3 things that made them a crap load of money? Brenda. Rice. Indigo. These 2 primarily, the ones you guys definitely have to know, rice and indigo. And every so often, sugarcane comes up as well. But rice and indigo are your number 1 and 2. Sugarcane should be your 3rd on your list. But you should know that South Carolina made most of its money not growing what? Tobacco. It made its money growing rice, indigo, and sugar. Virginia made its money off of what? Tobacco. They made their money off of rice, indigo, and sugar. What about North Carolina? What did they grow? They didn't grow nothing. They grew subsistence goods, right? They grew some corn. They grew some wheat. They grew some animals, that kind of thing. So North Carolina is all about subsistence, right? Again, folks, remind me what subsistence means. Where you grow just enough to survive. Do you grow enough to sell? No, just enough to survive. This moves us on to Georgia. How you guys doing? You guys doing okay so far? Yeah? I mean, I know we're going kind of fast, but I mean, ultimately, this is all stuff that you guys should already know, right? This is all just easy stuff. And you guys don't have to copy anything, which is great. If all of my lectures were like this, where we can just talk, we would finish all of U.S. history in the first month of school. But unfortunately, that's not the case. So, Georgia is the next Chesapeake colony you guys need to be familiar with. And Georgia was established by this man. Who's that guy? James Oglethorpe, the name of my first daughter. And James, was it my son? I don't remember. Oh, okay, it's my son. James Oglethorpe created a colony that was designed to be a second chance colony. A colony of opportunity. A philanthropic colony. Because this was designed to help who? Debtors. Yeah, the debtors. Usually the poor, but it was supposed to help debtors. Okay? We would give them a new opportunity to come to America, have a second chance, free them from prison. In exchange of their debt, what role did those debtors have to play in Georgia? Fernando? They were a buffer colony. And primarily this meant what? They were supposed to protect what from who?
South Carolina.
Protect South Carolina from who? The Spanish Floridians and the Native Americans. So because of that, we had a few rules in Georgia, the most important being what? No, those are all important. No plantations, no alcohol, all that stuff. No Catholics. That was the important one. ¿Por qué? Because the Spanish were Catholic. So, any questions about that at all? You sure? Okay. Here is what they had because they weren't allowed to have what? Plantations. They had these small farms, if you remember. And so, general overview of the southern colonies, or the Chesapeake colonies. Number one. Okay, here they are, in case you forgot. Economically, what did they grow? So, Maryland, Virginia, they grew what? Tobacco. But, and also Georgia. But, South Carolina, they grew rice, indigo, and sugarcane. So they relied on cash crops. Did they each have a diverse economy?
No.
No, because when tobacco grew stuff, when Virginia grew something, they only grew tobacco. South Carolina only grew those three things. Is that diverse when you only grow three things?
No.
I mean, think about example. Does McDonald's have a diverse menu? Yes, it does. Does In-N-Out have a diverse menu? No, it does not. They really technically only serve like 5 things, right? That is not diverse. Sure, they have some options, but is it a diverse economy? Absolutely not. Whereas McDonald's does have a diverse economy because they grew multiple things. So that's something to remember, folks. The Chesapeake colonies, whether it's Virginia, South Carolina, what have you, they do not have a diverse economy. They rely on cash crops, primarily these 4. Socially, folks, did they have a lot of towns in the South or no? Towns or no? No. Why don't they have towns where a lot of people live next to each other? Because of plantations. And if there's a plantation, are we going to live far apart from each other? Yeah, so plantations dominate the South, which is why you don't have towns. Where do you have towns, by the way? The northern colonies, right? New England colonies. So we had towns there because do they have plantations in the north? No, they don't. So important. Do they have high death rates or low death rates in the north? High death rates. Low birth rates. What serves as their primary source of labor in the south? What two groups serve as their primary source of labor? Indentured servants and then eventually slaves. What is, of those two during this time period, which is the largest group of people in the South? The rich, indentured servants, or slaves? In the colonial era, which of the following three was the largest population in the Chesapeake colonies? The wealthy and middle class, indentured servants, or slaves? In your mind, think about that real quick. Which of those three had the most people coming to America in the colonial era? Raise your hand if you think it's the rich middle class. Raise your hand if you think it's indentured servants. Raise your hand if you think it's slaves. It's the indentured servants. Guys, you have to remember, slaves, yes, there's a lot coming, but in order to have a lot of slaves coming, you also have to have what in America? Guys, can you just ship a bunch of slaves to America without people buying them? No. So they're expensive. So primarily, it's mostly indentured servants, okay? So make sure you guys are familiar with that. Lastly, in terms of politics, democracy is established in 1619. Who can give me an example of democracy in the South? Karina? House of Burgesses. Who can give me the other? Brenda? House of Delegates. Very good. Oh, by the way, is religion important in the South?
Yes.
Religion. Compared to the other colonies, is it important in the South? No, it is not. It is not important in the South. Cool. Everyone good with that section there? Yeah? All right, let's move on to the New England colonies. Where's my next set of notes? All right. The New England colonies are next. So we're not going to go into too much detail about the Reformation, but you guys should be familiar with the Reformation, okay? You guys need to remember Protestants versus Catholics. Does anyone have any questions about Protestants versus Catholics? First, there were Catholics. Everyone was a Catholic. Everyone was a Christian. Does that make sense? Because all it means to be a Christian is you believe in who? Jesus Christ. Not God. That's something else. If you believe in Jesus Christ, that makes you a Christian. So are Catholics Christian? Are Baptists Christian? Are Methodists Christian? Are Puritans Christian? They're all Christian. But what ends up happening is that the Christian church breaks apart, right? The ones that stayed were the Catholics. The ones that broke away were who? The Protestants, the people that protested. And so that's where that Reformation begins. You have all these reasons why the Reformation began. You have the Calvinists who believe in what? Predestination. The basic argument that all of your life is already predestined by God. It's already been preordained. By the way, if you're predestined, what do we call you? You're the elect. You're the elect. If you're predestined, you're part of the elect. If you're not predestined, you are what? Damned. You're likely going to his hell. Now, primarily, folks, when looking at Reformation, we really need to talk about the Church of England. Now, you guys know it was caused by all those divorces and whatever else, right? So the Anglican Church comes to power It's the Church of England, known as the Anglican Church, so don't forget that. So that's pretty important in and of itself. But one thing you guys need to be familiar with is that were most people happy that the Anglican Church broke away from the Catholic Church? Or rather, were they happy with its rate of breaking away? So a group of people called the Puritans, they believed that the Anglican Church didn't do what? They didn't make enough change. And so the Puritans wanted to purify the Catholic Church, the Anglican Church of what? Its Catholicness. So now you see two different churches emerge. You now see two different churches emerge in England. You have the Anglican Church and you have the Puritan Church. Does that make sense? You have the Anglican Church and you have the Puritan Church. The Anglicans are the official Church of England. Is that clear with everyone so far? That is the official Church of the English. The Puritans are not happy with it, so they want to fix it. They want to purify it and make it better. Then there's another group that says, you know what? There's no point in trying to purify it. We should just break away from that church. What is that group called? The Separatists. So, everyone familiar with these three groups and understand the differences? Puritans want to purify that. Separatists just want to break away completely. Okay? Yeah. Separatists are not Puritans. Separatists just say, we should just start our own church. All the things that Puritans want, don't try to make them do that. Let's just start our own church. Yes? They're all Protestants. Because none of them are, if you're not Christian, and if you're not Catholic, you're Protestant. Okay, that's the easiest breakaway. Then the Protestants break up into Anglicans, and the Anglicans are Anglicans, Puritans, and then there's Separatists as well. So it starts becoming this weird tree of stuff. Yes? The Separatists were Christians. Pretty much, folks, you have to remember, Puritans and Separatists were inspired by Calvinists, right? Because they both believe in what? They both believe in predestination. But the difference is, the Puritans wanted to make the King of England a Puritan. They want to make them Calvinists. The Separatists said, let's stop trying to change people. Let's just make our own church. Instead of waiting for you guys to figure out what the hell it is we're talking about, we're just going to make our own church. And if you want to join us, by all means, but you probably can't because you're all damned. Does that make sense? Now, because these two groups recognize that being in England sucks because you're constantly being harassed for not being Anglican, what do they decide to do? They come to America as pilgrims. Right? They come to America as pilgrims. So remember, pilgrims are Puritans and Separatists. Sorry, no. A Puritan was a pilgrim. A Separatist was a pilgrim. Is a pilgrim a Puritan? Not necessarily, because a pilgrim can be a Separatist. Just like A is in the alphabet. Is the alphabet in A? No, it's not. So pilgrim is like a category. Puritan and Separatist are specifics of that category. Okay? So pilgrim is who came. Puritan and Separatist is like men and women. Okay? Cool so far? Okay. Why did they come to America? Did they come for economic profit? No. They came because they wanted America to be this religious example to the world, right? They wanted to become what's that term that John Winthrop wanted it to become? A beacon on a hill, that shining example. I'll come back to that. I jumped ahead a little bit. But they form Plymouth Colony, right? They do Plymouth, and they find that rock that's total BS. It's not even real. It's not a real thing. So they land in Plymouth Colony on, what ship were they on again? The Mayflower Compact. So they land on Plymouth Rock, but before they get off the boat, they says, whoa, before you get off this boat, I want every single person to sign this document. What is this document? The Mayflower Compact. And what that Mayflower Compact was what? Is it a constitution?
No.
No, it is a...
The foundation for self-government.
Yeah, exactly. So it said to be loyal to the king, all that fun stuff, but what it comes down to, and I stressed this last time, is that the Mayflower Compact was a foundation for self-government. Pretty much think about it this way, folks. Let's say we're flying in a plane and we crash on Mars. I don't know how that happened, but it did. Okay? So, now we have oxygen in that plane, but we're going to start exploring and colonizing Mars. So, are we just going to go start exploring without talking about what government we're going to have?
No.
We're going to say, look, before we get off this ship, we got to set some ground rules. If America is no longer going to be able to govern us because they're like 3 million miles that way, we have to set up some kind of system, which means I'm in charge. Okay? I don't want any question about it. Then we'll have systems of, rotation in office and whatever else. But really what it comes down to is, when you come to America and you're on your own, do we want some form of self-government? And this is the foundation for that. Yes, we'll have democracy. Yes, we'll be loyal to the king. But that's what the Mayflower Compact is all about. They do their thing. They sign their document. Things are cool. They have Thanksgiving. You don't have to know that. And then eventually it gets absorbed. Then we did this thing for a while, right? Like, oh, it's cool. Yeah, and myth or whatever. Right? It was like, oh, they're signing it. Or are they really? Oh, it's a lie. Thanksgiving. Anyway. Then Massachusetts Bay Colony. Massachusetts Bay Colony. Established in 1630 by John Winthrop, not to be confused with John Smith. And by the way, folks, again, we're talking about the New England colonies here, right? We're talking about the northern colonies, the New England colonies. So in these New England colonies, folks, the Northeast, primarily these are religious colonies, right? The whole purpose is to make a society or a government that follows what? Do they want their government here to follow religion? Yes. Of course they do, because they're very religious. So that's something we have to keep in mind. This is not a secular government. They're not like, oh yeah, separation of church and state. Is religion going to influence their government here? Yes. Religion is very strong. Puritan religion is very strong in this region, and that's heavily going to influence what they do. In fact, the whole purpose was this entire area to become a what? A city or a beacon on a hill. Okay, it's supposed to become a city or a beacon on a hill. 1630, yes. Yeah, in 1691 it's absorbed. I'm talking about just Massachusetts Bay in general. Massachusetts Bay was founded in 1630. It eventually absorbs Plymouth in 1691. Yeah, much later. Anyway. So it becomes a beacon on a hill. That's its goal. It's supposed to be super religious. Everyone has to be religious here. Are you allowed not to be religious? No, you got to be what religion in this colony? Puritan. Can you be Anglican? No, get out of here, Anglicans. If you want to be Anglican, you should move to which colonies? Maryland or the southern colonies, maybe Rhode Island. But is Massachusetts going to welcome you with open arms? Absolutely not. They do have some sense of government. You have the general court. They gave people the right to vote. They had power of the purse, all that fun stuff. Yeah. Congregationalists is a good question. The Congregationalists, folks, were pretty much the separatists. Congregationalists were separatists. Pretty much because the separatists were no longer going to be Puritans, right? So separatists said, we can't just keep on calling ourselves separatists. Let's call ourselves Congregationalists. And Congregationalists and Puritans pretty much wanted the exact same thing, right? It's just that Puritans wanted to purify the Anglican Church, while separatists said, screw the Anglican Church, let's just do it already. So that's the difference. Anyway, they had the Body of Liberties, which is their constitution, and things were great. But the important political thing in New England was that they had what? Town meetings. They had town meetings in New England. You have to remember that. That's hands down pretty important. Town meetings. Town meetings, again, were the most democratic form of government in the colonies, which sets them apart from the South. the Chesapeake colonies. And again, why didn't the Chesapeake colonies have town meetings? Because they were too far due to plantations. Whereas the Northerners, did they have plantations? No, they mostly had what? Subsistence farming, small farms, that kind of thing. And so could they have town meetings? Yes, they could, right? They could have town meetings. And by the way, these town meetings typically were surrounded by what other very important institution in their community? Church. So town meetings, church, all very important in New England. Questions there about town meetings? Just know that they have them and they're super important. Then we got to the fun stuff, talking about families here. We talked about how families... Oh, by the way, moving to New England. Who typically moved to New England? Single men and women? Families? Families, right? Why don't we want single men and women to come to the colonies? Adultery, temptation, promiscuity. So we want to make sure that if you're coming to the colonies, you have a family already. Because also, aren't families stable? Families are good. We want that. Oh, of course their kids grow up. That's okay. But their kids will be raised in a society that teaches them the importance of family. Whereas if you're coming from England, who knows what you know? No, we want to raise your kids. That's the importance. Ultimately, folks, the entire life revolves around the church. We also beat and shamed their kids because it was awesome. That's what we did. In the good old days, we'd send them away when they were 12 to beat them again because the good old days. And of course, we had public shamings and whatever else. Public shamings. Public shamings. Now, with regard to education, was education important in the North? Yes. I would say so. In fact, I would go as far to say that they had a law that suggested that if you had 50 families in a town, what would you have to do? Yeah, but if you had 50 families in a town, what would you have to do? Build a school, and that was called the Massachusetts Education Law. I'm being told right now that I did not tell that to second period. Or what class? To third period. Sixth period. Does sixth period have it? It might just be because you weren't paying attention, guys. I just want to make that clear. Do you have it? Okay. Well then, based on my quick poll here, some people have it, which means for those of you that don't have it, shame on you. You weren't paying attention. Anyway, so obviously, quiet down, folks. Obviously, religion and education are very important in the North, right? We can't dispute that. It's in the law. In fact, it's so important that what was the first college that they created in the South? in the North? Harvard College. So here's my question real quick. Was Harvard College created before or after the Great Awakening? Before the Great Awakening. This is one question that often comes up. It's kind of like, ooh, do you know when? The point is that Harvard was created before the Great Awakening. Okay? Because was religion already important in Massachusetts before the Great Awakening? Yes. Sure. And that is something you should take note of. It didn't just happen during the Great Awakening. Religion was already the foundation of Massachusetts. When religion began to spread in places like New York, Rhode Island, whatever, then they had all these other churches coming to fruition, like, Brown and Dartmouth. Then we had some troublemakers. These guys. Who are these people? Roger Williams and Anne Hutchinson. Dissenters. Very good. They were dissenters. Roger Williams believed in a lot of things, but pretty much what religion did he oppose? What was the religion in Massachusetts that he was opposing? Puritanism. Remember, it's not Anglicanism. He's opposing Puritanism in Massachusetts. And he says they're too strict. He says they want to break away from the church. He says that we should give Native Americans, money for their land, all that stuff. Does he become pretty unpopular? Does he get in trouble in Massachusetts? Yes. So they kick him out, and he moves to where? Rhode Island, where it becomes a colony for religious toleration. So Roger Williams, Rhode Island, and religious toleration. The 3 R's. On the opposite side, you got this woman, Anne Hutchinson, who practiced the idea of antinomianism or extreme predestination. The idea behind antinomianism was that you did not have to do what? Follow man's law or the Bible. So you don't have to follow Puritan ministers. You don't have to follow Puritan-influenced government officials, because is your life already determined for you? Yeah, so do whatever the hell you want, because you're going to go there or not. We don't know. She got in trouble for saying that you don't have to follow the law. She got in trouble for disobeying Puritan philosophies, obviously. She got in trouble for all of that stuff. But what got her almost killed? She thought she could talk to God. That's not something you should do. Even today, folks, is that pretty dangerous? All right, then. So, she believed she could talk to God. So that in of itself becomes one of those situations that become fairly important. Now, moving on, folks, let's talk about the New England Wars. Huh? It doesn't get her killed. She leaves, and then she's killed by Native Americans. She leaves and goes to Rhode Island. Anyway, folks, there are 2 wars that you guys should know. The Pequot War and King Philip's War. For your purposes, folks, you just need to know that these are Indian wars in New England. Okay, folks? These are Indian wars in New England. That's all you have to know. That the Pequot War and King Philip's War were New England Indian wars. Everyone cool with that? All right. By the way, what was the Indian War in Virginia that you guys have to know? In Jamestown? The Powhatan Wars. So just make sure you guys are familiar. In response to the Native American threat, what do we create? The what? Oh, prayer towns. Yeah, we do that, and that's good. And that gets people to, get more. But that makes things worse, actually. Prayer towns actually piss off Native Americans even more. So once they start attacking the New England colonies, what do we create to protect ourselves? That's the thing I was looking for. New England Confederation. The New England Confederation, as you guys might remember, was a military alliance. You guys remember that? It was designed for cooperation for military, economic, slave purposes. So was that fairly successful? Sure. It was successful for some time. We didn't really do anything with it, but it was still there, 1743, so good, or 1643. So good times, but, it was around. Then, the King of England was like, no, I don't like you guys becoming too independent. You guys aren't practicing mercantilism enough. By the way, what is mercantilism? Yeah, so when the colonies have to benefit the mother country. So what might that look like, folks? Real quick, what might mercantilism look like? You can only trade with England, sure. What else might how would the mother country deal with the colonies? What would the mother country do to the colonies to make sure that mercantilism was happening? They might send an army, the navigation. What do the navigation laws do? So the mother country would establish things like navigation laws through the Dominion of New England that would tell us that we could only trade certain things, right? That we could only ship certain goods. Maybe would they tell us how much to grow? Is that possible? They might tell us how much to grow of a certain good, maybe what goods to grow. So pretty much they're being controlled by the mother country, right? So that's something to keep in mind, is that the colonies are being regulated by the mother country. That might be another way to put it. The colonies or the colonial economy was being regulated by the mother country. That might be a better way to put it. The colonial economy was being regulated by the mother country, and that's what the Dominion of New England did. The Dominion of New England regulated the economies of the colonies. Cool there? Okay. This is what it looked like. You ship this, and you ship this, and you ship this. Could the colonies just send whatever they want to New England, or to England? No, they had to ship what England wanted. If we started shipping like green dresses, they'd be like, why are you sending us green dresses? This is not what we want. We want blue and red dresses. So this is just one of those things. General overview of the colonies. Economically, folks, are they a diverse economy, cash crop economy? Which is it? Subsistence. But it's definitely more diverse, right? Because is everyone a subsistence farmer? No. You have some bankers, you have some people working in shipbuilding, you have some people working on lumber. So you have a diverse economy, folks. So let me repeat that. The New England economy had a diverse economy. You had farming, shipbuilding, lumber, fishing, commerce, trade. That's what New England was doing. So again, was their economy diverse? Sure. Again, here they are doing a whole stuff. In terms of social, was family important? Was education important? Was religion important? Was religion important? In the New England colonies, was religion important? Did they own slaves? So here's the rub. They did own slaves for some time, but what did they eventually do? Abolish slaves. So initially, every colony owned slaves. So I know this wasn't in the original lecture. You might just want to write it down somewhere. But originally, every colony owned slaves. Because when Massachusetts was built, did they have a law that automatically said, and we ban slavery? No. So originally, everyone had slaves. But they chose to believe that slavery was immoral or unjust. So they got rid of it. Does that make sense to everyone? So everyone originally had slaves. But the New England colonies were the first to get rid of it. Cool with everyone? Awesome. Politically, folks, what was the most important thing in the South? I mean, in the North? Town meetings. Cool. And then again, Congregationalists, you guys know what that is? The separatists. Congregationalists are separatists. Cool. That's part 2. You guys want to take a quick break? All right, I'll give you guys a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back. So take 5 minutes. Help her. I'm going to start in 5 minutes whether or not you guys are back, so make sure you guys don't wander too far. I want to make your test 150 questions. 150. I want to. Not because I'm a terrible person, but because I feel like there's just so many things that you could get asked. We'll see. Monday. One minute. No, these people, no, not at all. Be careful. No, don't do that. That actually would have hurt. You might have actually tripped over that. All right, folks, we got 2 more sections to cover pretty quickly here. Shouldn't take us too long. Now, again, for those of you that came a little bit late today, it is much to my dismay to inform you that I have to change the night session schedule again, only because I found out recently that I have other engagements that I have to attend. As a result, there will be no other night session this week, but there will be one on Monday and Wednesday from 3 to 5. I know that becomes problematic for many of you because you might have sports or whatever after school. I apologize for that, but again, just like I'm doing today, I will be recording these lectures and posting them online. So in the event that you absolutely cannot make it due to sports or whatever, I'll try to make sure you guys get a hold of them and you guys can access them online thereafter. So that's that. Again, I'll give you guys these dates again tomorrow and Wednesday, so you guys should be able to have them. Otherwise, this brings us to our next lecture. No. No. You'll get them later, I promise. Middle colonies and the colonial life is the next section. Middle colonies and colonial life. Again, so we're coming down to the wire, folks. We're almost done with all of this. Middle colonies and colonial life. So does anyone have any questions so far about any of this stuff? You guys doing okay? Yes, sir. Oh, the second section? The New England Colonies. The New England Colonies. Here's section 3 of what you guys need to know for your final. The Middle Colonies and Colonial Life. Again, folks, if you do have questions, please stop me and ask. You guys are doing a pretty good job of asking questions so far. Keep that up. I like the questions. If you understand what I'm saying, just like nod and say yes and mark up your notes and whatever else. That's what I like to see. All right, let's talk about New York City is what we started off with first. New York was originally colonized by who? The Dutch. And the Dutch came here, why? Does anyone know why the Dutch came? Primarily what? To spread religion, to develop democracy, to make money. Why did they come? Economic purposes, right? They came to make money. They came for economic profit. So again, shh, quiet folks. When we're talking about the Dutch and why they came, the answer is they came to make money. Cool so far? Because, folks, it's all about mercantilism, right? You want to colonize to make money. That's what's going on here. And so the Dutch showed up, and so were the Swedish, and you don't have to care about any of that stuff. But he's taken over by Duke of York, so Duke of York wins and takes over everything. And then we named him after him. Duke of York. He takes it over, becomes New York, and because of all of that history, folks, why does New York become so unique among all the colonies? It's super diverse. It has Swedish, it has Dutch, it has the English, it has the French, it has the Finnish, it has the Germans. It becomes very diverse. We talk about all those Dutch influences, like, do I have that slide of all the things? Oh, I don't have it here. It's too bad. But all those influences like Easter eggs and waffles and golf and Santa Claus and all those things, Sinterklaas. So it's all fun, good stuff. Now, despite all of these cool things happening, and again, him taking over and forming the Duke of Yorkness, he introduces, or he adopts the system that the Dutch originally had called the patroon system. And the patroon system is very similar to what that we learn today. The thing that we learned today in class. So if you were in my first or third period, what did we learn today that the patroon system is very similar to? They're similar to company towns. So if you guys were in my class today, you know this already. You'll learn it tomorrow if you're in 2 or 6. But pretty much the basic idea, folks, in a patroon system is that you lived on my land. You got paid with king dollars. You slept in the king hotel. Does that make sense? And so I own everything. Do you own anything? No, you don't. So pretty much you work for me, right? Do you own any property? No, you don't. So that's not the greatest thing in the world. It's not, ideal. So just keep that in mind. Eventually, New York spreads, but are people too happy with this patroon system? No, so you have Leisler's Rebellion. And Leisler's Rebellion is similar to, which other rebellion? Bacon's Rebellion, because it's a bunch of who angry at who? The poor angry at the rich. You can let them know they're meeting in the other room. But in any case, you have the poor angry at the rich, thus resulting in Leisler's Rebellion. Good so far? Questions about Leisler's Rebellion? You sure? All right, so just be familiar. This one is against the patroonship system. Bacon's Rebellion was against Governor Berkeley and, the Tidewater elite. This one is a rebellion against the aristocratic nature of the patroon system. Cool so far? All right. Then we have Pennsylvania. Why I don't have it written here. Oh, and then we have Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania was founded by William Penn. Now, they were unique in a lot of ways. First and foremost, they didn't have an official religion. But the major religion in Pennsylvania was what? Quakers. Now again, like I said, they didn't have an official religion, but majority of them were Quakers. They believed in religious tolerance, like what other colony? Rhode Island and Maryland to some degree. And they believed in the philosophy of the doctrine of inner light, right? That truth could be found within. Now, one thing that they did do that was unique was that they gave an equal role to who in church? Who played an equal role in church that was unique for the Quakers? Women. Did the Anglicans do that? Did Anglicans make women equal in the church? In fact, the Anglican Church just recently ruled that women could not be priests. Also, the Catholic Church just recently ruled that nuns could not become priests. So even in the year 2012, two of the oldest religions ruled recently that women were still not going to be equal to men in their own religion. That's like within the last 6 months, guys. So it's not very advanced if you look at those religions. So were the Quakers pretty far ahead of their time? Very progressive. Again, no paid clergy. Most of their meetings were in, meeting houses. They also didn't pay what? They didn't pay taxes. They didn't serve in the military because they're pacifists. They also had blue laws, like no gambling, no drama, all that fun stuff. Very similar to the Puritan codes. But again, because of their laws, they did welcome a lot of people. They're very diverse, just like the New Yorkers. And again, they had a very diverse economy. Shipping, building, farming, all that fun stuff. Any questions there about Pennsylvania? Everyone cool with the Quakers? Just know about the religion, the Quakers, right? They're very progressive. They gave Native Americans land with money. They made women equal in the church. They believed in the doctrine of inner light. They're religiously tolerant. Those fun things. Oh, like I said, they sold land to the people, or they bought land from Native Americans, and we recognize that this has ended up being what? Remember which class discovered that this was actually not the letter M? It was which class? Third period? Yeah, remember that this was not the letter M, but rather Native American and a white man holding hands. So it's actually the first promotion of gay marriage way back when. I'm just kidding. General overview of the Middle Colonies then. Like I said, we should be done pretty early because the Middle Colonies shouldn't take us too long. Politically, folks, they're pretty democratic, right? Politically, they're fairly democratic. But they did have that one system where people had no power. What was that called? The patroon system. So that's not very democratic. But for the most part, democracy. Yeah. Oh, no. Yeah, it's like the head right system, except when you come, you still don't have land. Come to America, and you get to live on my land. Head right system, come to America, and I will give you land. So the head right system and patroon system are very similar. Head right system, come to America, work for me for 7 years, I will give you land. It's better than the patroon system because the patroon system said, come to America, work for me forever, but you don't have to buy anything. You work for me, but you get all the land, whatever else, but you don't own anything if you choose to leave. So no freedoms, a little bit different. In terms of economics, folks, what did they do? Economically, folks, what role did they serve in the colonies? They're the bread basket. They made all the food. See? Bread. Bread basket. And socially, folks, they were religiously and ethnically diverse and tolerant. Cool. Everyone good there? Then we talked about who got exploited and who didn't, and then blah, blah, blah. Oh yeah, so talk about women real quick. Did women gain or did women benefit during the colonial era? No, right? Because did women gain political rights during this time period? Did women get to be equal to men during this time period? Did women lose their land when they got married during this time period? Yes, they did. So when they get married, they lose everything. So that's kind of a problem. You would keep your land if you didn't get married, but if you did get married, you lose everything. So you keep your land, yeah. If you choose not to get married, you keep your land. That's how it works. Women had no vote, no property rights, no property, all that stuff. Wealthy land-owning men got everything. Indentured servants, landless former indentured servants, did they gain or lose during this time period? A little bit of both, right? I mean, they got to come to America. That's pretty big opportunity, right? So that's pretty cool. Bacon's Rebellion, blah, blah, blah. African slaves, win or lose? Lose, come on. Women lose. Life in the colonies, folks. Most of the people living in the colonies were not English, so that's kind of important. What is the largest non-English group? Slaves, Africans, right? The largest non-English minority were slaves or Africans. So remember that. Africans were the largest non-English ethnic group. It wasn't English because we're saying non-English. German and Scots-Irish were also plentiful. We had the Paxton Boys and the Regulator Movement. These are just two rebellions led by the Scots-Irish, right? You guys remember them? By the way, who do the Scots-Irish hate? Native Americans. Who else do they hate? They hate the king. They hate authority. They hate everything. They're just angry people. They're like the anarchists of the time period. Other colonial facts, folks. Most people at this time were doing what kind of life? They're mostly rural farmers. Rural. Ben Franklin wrote Poor Richard's Almanac, so it's a pretty fun book if you ever come across it. Early to bed, early to rise. Why are you not at school? Cotton Mather developed a cure or inoculation for what? Smallpox, so that helped not kill a lot of people unless we were intentionally trying to get you sick. Huh? Almanac, that's correct. Again, Cotton Mather saved people with smallpox inoculation. And John Peter Zenger established what? Freedom of the press. And again, the most highly recognized profession in the colonies was what? What profession do people like, wow, I can't believe you're that. You are so well recognized. Ministers, priests, not lawyers or doctors or teachers. I know. It was ministers. Ministers or priests were the highly regarded positions or professions in colonial America. Everyone coolios with that? Huh? They were religious, not very religious, but they were religiously tolerant. Last section, folks. This shouldn't take us too long. We should be done in just a few minutes. Give me about 10 and we'll be done. The colonial period. First Great Awakening. How many Great Awakenings are there? 3. 2. 2 Great Awakenings. 1 Great Awakening. All right, folks, pretty much what you should note about the Great Awakening is that it happened everywhere. But primarily, let's do a recap here. What was the primary religion in the South? Anglican, the Church of England. What is the primary religion in the Middle Colonies? Middle Colonies? Quakers, or religious tolerance. Oh yeah, and in the South, in Maryland in particular, what do you got? Catholics. Maryland has Catholics. But in the North, New England, what religion do you got? Puritans, or Congregationalists. Everyone gravy so far? Calvinists, Puritans, Congregationalists, all pretty much the same thing. Yeah. Huh? Why are they called New England? Because they were the one most similar to England. Think about it. They had shipping, they had towns. England is not plantations. They're like New England. So they said it's the most similar to England, hence New England. Anyway, folks. What do you got going on during this time period? Well, religion is declining at this time. We talked about that before, right? Religion is declining because people are moving away from the church. People are not focusing on religion as much anymore. And then you had the Salem witch trials that were really bad. So the Salem witch trials really made people question religion, right? Because if they got this wrong, what else did they get wrong? Did they get Christ wrong? Maybe that's not even his name. Maybe his name was Jebus. You don't know. What if it was? What if they got the Salem witch trials wrong? What else did they get wrong? And so many of them were like, all right, we should get people to come back to the church. So one of the key ways to get people to re-enter the church was the beginning of the Second Great Awakening. The First Great Awakening. And the First Great Awakening's job was to revitalize the church, right? It was a church awakening in the 1740s. Your key leaders of the Great Awakening were who? Jonathan Edwards and George Whitefield. These two individuals believed in a new type of preaching. These new individuals, these new lights, these new itinerant preachers, these new lights, they were itinerant preachers that traveled everywhere. And what kind of preaching style did they use? Jeremiads. They would use emotion to capture your attention. Again, like, God is angry. And I have one quoted here. What is it? The God that holds you over the pit of hell, much as one holds a spider or some loathsome insect over the fire, abhors you and is dreadfully provoked. His wrath toward you burns like a fire, and he looks upon you as worthy of nothing else but to be cast into that fire. And yet it is nothing but his hand that holds you from falling into the fire every moment. What is that from? Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God by Jonathan Edwards. So you should be familiar with Jonathan Edwards doing that Jeremiah-style preaching. Here he is doing that. And then you also have George Whitefield. Here's George Whitefield. George Whitefield was also one of the best preachers. He was much better. He was the best. He would say things like, you are teetering on the brink of hell. You can escape this pain of sin. You can escape the pains of hell. All you need to do is look inside yourself to find salvation and free your burdens. Embrace your salvation. Amen. But they didn't. And some people did not. Nonetheless, folks, were these new kinds of religions and these new kinds of preachings successful? Most definitely. And the old lights weren't too happy about it. But the significance here, folks, of the Great Awakening, is that one, you start seeing churches break apart, right? You start seeing division in old churches. Because our different churches are going to get new ideas. Sure. Secondly, you see a fresh wave of missionary work. You see new missionaries going out and educating people. Especially, who are we going to educate about religion? Natives and slaves. You also see the rise of new higher education colleges, like what? Dartmouth, Brown, Rutgers, and Princeton. And you also see this democratization of religion. And this emphasis on like spirituality. You know, you could have a relationship with God. Which is cool, I guess. The democratization and decentralization of religion. Okay. Don't forget, folks, chapter 4 and 5 are due on Monday. And your Unit 1 test will be on Wednesday. Political, economic, religious, social, international, and arts. What? Explain to her, Joanna. Joanna, explain. Are there any questions? You guys are good? All right then, folks. Have a wonderful day. Remember, there's no other night session this week. We'll continue on Monday. Have a good day, folks. Again, here's a night session schedule for people that need it. People like Brenda, you're welcome. Yes.
You created monsters with your APUSH methods.
We were working, and it was sticking to the ground, to the grass, and we're like, guys, walk there, you can get arrested.
See, that makes me happy. That's what I like to hear.
Now Brenda thinks everyone's her slave.
And then I told them they could at least be indentured servants, and then they're arguing that indentured servants are worse than slaves.
Oh.
And then Kyle said she wants to be the judicial. Judicial branch. She can't because that's coach.
Because then see, whoever like under president follows the Congress. Yeah.
Whatever helps you understand better, guys. That's all I have to say about that.